This is the RB17, a £5 million track-only hypercar created by Formula One design genius Adrian Newey and built by the advanced technologies arm of the Red Bull Formula One team. And while Newey is definitely leaving Red Bull at the end of the 2024 season, he confirmed to Top Gear that whatever he does next, a contract exists that ensures he'll bring the RB17 to fruition. Now, here's the man himself to tell us all about it. Adrian, it's wonderful to see you. And thank you to, what's this room referred to as? I mean, obviously, all your previous work here.
I guess the museum, it's a sort of working museum. We've got the show bit out there, and then this is the bit where the cars are already stored.
And it gives us a great opportunity. So it's the RB17. The name, first of all, let's start a little bit about that. So it was because of COVID interruptions or something, yeah?
Exactly right. So the new rules for what was going to be 2021 were issued in kind of back end of 2019. So teams started working on the 21 regulations in 2020, and obviously COVID struck. There's the compulsory factory shutdown for all teams for almost 3 months, at which point, of course, there wasn't enough time to design a new car for 21. So the regulations changed to say that we had to run an evolution of the 20 car in 21, which was the 16B for us. And so it meant that the car we had been working on, RB17, was stillborn. And it actually, the timing also worked out because I rather kind of foolishly gave myself a very busy 2021 in as much as I did the first drawing for this in January. But at the same time, we then had the development programme for the 16B through the season, because we had that very tight championship battle with Lewis and Mercedes. And of course, we were working on the research and design for the brand new car for 22. So
I've got to ask you, the gestation for this. I mean, I'm thinking you must have been thinking about something along these lines way back. I mean, how far back? Even to the very early days of your career? Had you always thought, I would like to do the ultimate road/track car?
Yes, I suppose it was about 2010 or so, maybe a little bit later, I can't remember then. Sony PlayStation approached me just before Christmas and said, would I be interested in designing a no-rules Formula One car? And that particular Christmas we went to Switzerland skiing, but the snow was poor, so I was kind of a bit bored sitting around in the chalet. And so I started that sketching what became the PlayStation X1. And so I always had that in the back of my mind.
Tell me about the powertrain, the chassis, and the intent behind it.
I think the intent's the most important bit to start with. And the intent really was to create a car that was capable of Formula One lap times, but at the same time be accessible to people, and for two people at that. So that if you're a driver that would like a coach, then you can have a coach in the passenger seat. So share the experience, share the joy of the car, and try to make the car really accessible and adaptable. So those were kind of the fundamental keys. Then you say, okay, well, what else would you like from the car? My belief is cars of this level should also be art pieces, really, that you treat literally as a piece of art, a sculpture.
See, that fascinates me. I assumed that the science part of this was just going to predominate, and that how it looks, which is amazing, obviously, is some way certainly secondary and maybe quite a long way behind. But actually, people buy these things because they look super cool, don't they?
In my career, which has always been performance orientated, when it comes to the aerodynamics, then you have to go with what makes the fastest car. Stopwatch is always the master. With this, I wanted it to be a bit more kind of a rounded product in terms of the looks, the sound, and of course the driving experience, and as I mentioned, the range of accessibility.
Can you tell me what engine it will be? It's obviously, this is a static model.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that yet, but what are we talking?
So it's a V10, naturally aspirated, 15,000 RPM, 1,000 horsepower. The roots of the engine was in discussion with our powertrains division, newly formed, as to kind of what we could do, how we could achieve it, and then from there we took that and worked with Cosworth, and so they are then taken, if you like, our specification for what we wanted to achieve and gone off and done the rest of the research and the detail. And it's been running as a single for a while. Blocks are now being cast, and they will be starting to build up the first real engine shortly. This one was kind of really focusing even more on weight. So the Valkyrie engine was 200 kilos. This will be 150 kilo engine. So it's
what size is it? What capacity?
It's only 4.5.
4.5 litre V10,
yeah.
revving to 15,000 RPM. Yeah. Now the V10 thing, I mean, as well as creating something that looks beautiful, a big driver for this project is the noise as well. Yeah. So like most of us, I suspect you're a little underwhelmed by the sound of the current F1 engine. Yeah?
Couldn't possibly comment. But I think if I kind of over my career, then obviously heard a huge number of different engines, from Cosworth V8s to Ferrari V12s and the various V10s. And I think the V10, it's obviously very subjective for me. The high revving V10 was the best sounding engine.
But it does have an E-motor.
It does have an E-motor. And the E-motor, that's really a development of what we did with Valkyrie, which it fulfills quite a few functions. It means that the clutch, it makes pull away very easily because it pulls away on the electric motor. The combustion engine only engages when you're doing sort of, I don't know, on Valkyrie's case I think it's about 15 miles an hour, be slightly more on this. It saves you a gear because effectively first gear is you don't need a short first gear. It also performs the function reverse, so you throw away 2 gears to start with. It gives torque infill, it gives extra power boost, 200 horsepower, so it's an extra 200 horsepower. In exactly the same way as the current Formula 1 cars, so it more than justifies itself in terms of the weight and the complication, just for all the functions that it can then perform.
And the other great thing about this car is that there are no rules. Part of your reputation, Adrian, is built on the fact that you see things, not necessarily loopholes, but opportunities in the rules.
Yeah.
And that's where your winning often comes from.
Yeah.
So how is it doing a car where you go, can do what I want? I mean, it must be amazing.
Well, it is. It's very invigorating because, as you say, so often we're hemmed in by regulations, and on the one hand, it's exciting to then kind of spot the loopholes or probably most importantly, kind of what solutions lend themselves best to a set of regulations, and that's something I very much enjoy. With this, that constraint as such is removed. Of course, there are other considerations that come in. First and foremost, the load capacity of the tyres. We've formed a collaboration with Michelin for this particular project. So they've developed tyres especially for the car.
They are the primary limiting factor.
But they are the primary limiting factor on ultimately the downforce you can generate and to an extent the performance of the car. So what that then suggests, okay, if tyre load is a limitation, you certainly want to focus on weight. So there's been a big weight focus. The car, depending on what specification you have it in, is around 875 kilos.
Good Lord, okay.
So it's quite light with, say, 1200 horsepower. And also I think the weight in terms of the lighter the car is, the more driving enjoyment it tends to give.
Can I ask you why you're so keen on making this a 2-seater? Would the ultimate expression of this not be?
The ultimate expression would be a single-seater, but I think it's nice to, I do track days from time to time and go along with friends, and it's nice to be able to give them a passenger ride. If you take away the art side of it, then this has to be about enjoyment of the owner, the customer, and the ability to, if they wish to have somebody in the passenger seat, I think is part of that. It's part of the joy of the experience, and I want it to be a 2-seater for those reasons.
So the passenger's slightly staggered?
First of all, because the natural shape of a human, then your shoulders and elbows are if you like, the widest part, so it actually makes sense to stagger slightly. It also, the elbows in particular, if you're sitting kind of side by side and the driver's got his elbows out slightly, then it tends to be getting in the way of the passenger, and the driver might be worried that the passenger's elbows are going to get in the way as well. So just a small amount of stagger gets rid of all those problems. So it's been, I think it's quite an elegant solution. The car does have some luggage space in the front, so it's got space for 2 sets of overalls. It's in front of the rear wheels, there's space for a helmet on each side. So just practicality, if you want to throw your stuff in before it goes to circuit, then you can.
Cup holders? Any cup holders?
Short on cup holders,
I'm joking.
afraid.
I kind of expected an LMP1 car, but I think this is much closer to Formula One.
Yeah.
Clearly that's really tough to do, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, my experience recently, apart from Valkyrie, has all been Formula One, obviously, and some of the aerodynamic solutions we have in Formula One, particularly kind of the side pod shape, exactly. Then
this area here,
that area there, and the porosity that creates past the rear wheel is something that aerodynamically is, I think, a very good feature. So it made sense to integrate, for that to be part of the car. Of course, a Formula One car, then you have a completely separate rear wheel, so then it's the problem, okay, having done this downwashing side pod, how do you integrate the rear fender, which obviously this has been our solution. And it is, what I should say is that this car, this model, is a point in time. We have developed the car in CAD, got it to a point, and then made a full-size model like this. That was, I can't remember now, probably about last April. What we then did was using what's called augmented reality, which is VR goggles, but you can still see the room. So you can see the car, the virtual car. And in this case, what we did is put the real first model in a room, and then put whichever version we were working on in VR next to it. So then, and that gives you a sense of scale and proportion and everything else, which is nice. So from that, we started to develop what became this. So this is actually a point in time last September. So it's already moved on quite a bit from what you see here.
Oh, you must drive your people crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's.
Will it ever be finished?
It has to be finished at some point. So the car's now developed quite a lot from this. It's a bit smaller in length and width.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we just felt it was a little bit on the large side.
It's just over 5 metres long, yeah? 2 metres wide.
The final car is, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, I think I am. It's almost exactly the same footprint in terms of length and width as a Aston Martin DBX. Okay. So it's not as small as a Valkyrie, but equally it's not a big car.
Can you take us through some of the highlights? You know, please feel free. I will do my best to keep up with your brain, but you know, I mean, there are forms here. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
So the front wing is obviously, as you say, free of regulations. Then the aero really is, in many ways, it's much closer to a Formula One car than an LMP car. So it's a Formula One style front wing, but developed without regulations to suit. And because we have a full length and quite forward loaded diffuser or floor, then actually the downforce requirement from the front wing is relatively modest. We also have to have a system which is capable of losing downforce from depending on which tyre choice you have, from a relatively low speed. With the highest load tyres, then it's about 250 k's, kilometres per hour, whatever that is.
155, I think.
Yeah, around that. Everything starts backing off, so the front wing backs off, the rear wing backs off, the back of the diffuser backs off, and we also have fans, so it's a blown diffuser.
And
the fans slow down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ride height changes because we've got active.
So hang on. So that all happens. Is this? So when there's the thing I wanted to ask you is, ordinary mortals, the one thing that very few people will have any experience of is the sort of downforce that this can generate. I understand it's about 1,700 kilograms of downforce at under 150 miles per hour.
I'm not very good at those numbers. What I can say is that the aero efficiency of the car. I mean. A Formula One car I can't remember the exact number, but it's probably around 3 or 4 in terms of downforce over drag. I think some of the LMP cars before they got clipped, so the end of the last generation, were up around 6 or 7. I'm not exactly sure, somewhere around there. This depending on the condition and the speed is 16. Okay. So it's when you know, something like a commercial aircraft now, it's not a long way off aircraft levels of efficiency, which is, as far as I know, completely uncharted territory for
Good Lord.
And then we'll have 3 levels of tyre choice. What's called a Michelin Confidential tyre, which is the highest grip, a little bit more peaky in its operation. So, as you say, if the car does start to slide, you've probably got to be quite quick to sort it out. To if you like, the standard Michelin slick, which will have a much broader operating window, both in terms of slip angle and temperature. So it'll be a easier tyre to drive. And then a treaded tyre, more like a road tyre, which offers a further step in that direction again, if you like, of less grip but bigger board bandwidth. And so that then combined with the active suspension in terms of how much downforce you want to choose, how much stability you want to choose, it gives us a huge range of flexibility. Want it to be something that everybody can access within reasonable levels of experience and enjoy the car. And you know, I've driven a huge variety of cars over the years. I do a bit of historic racing.
Yeah, I know, GT40.
Yeah. Exactly, the GT40 and the E-Type and so forth.
What do you enjoy? This was a question because I've been fortunate to drive a GT40 and some historic cars. Now, by any measure, they are a million miles away from this. Yeah. But there's still massive satisfaction there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And that is part of the motivation for this car. Is that when I drive, say, the GT40, it's tremendously exciting. Enjoy it. It's a car that once you've got to a reasonable level of driving experience, then you can slide it around a bit and you can feel as if you're Ayrton Senna or whatever. And I wanted people to be able to kind of experience the ability to feel a car in the same way as I can feel a GT40, but also have the adrenaline and experience of what it is like to drive at up to Formula 1 levels of lap time.
This will lap Silverstone as fast as a contemporary F1 car.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. The aerodynamics are really focused around getting the best performance possible as that diffuser, and so you go back to say the front wing generates downforce, of course, but it's relatively modest because the central pressure of the diffuser's quite far forwards, which gives you a very central downforce, a nice stable downforce. The car does have fans on it to augment the downforce at low speed to give it very high levels of performance at low speed. But the fans are done in a very different way to what has been done in the past. And indeed, compared to the X1, it's not.
Two fans, yeah?
Two fans, yeah, correct. All this arrangement is effectively it's like a barge board applied to a two-seater.
Okay.
So that's all about trying to get the front wheel wake out of the way and not go under the floor.
And then reattach that airflow to the side of the car.
And then the porosity on the inside here is the flow that then comes through fully attached.
So you're tidying up the turbulent air around here.
Yeah, this has the job of pushing the dirty air out here.
Okay.
So, and then this porosity through here has the job of keeping this area energized, so the floor edge energized, and then ultimately going back through beside the rear wheels so that any flow beside the rear wheels is tidy and good energy, and indeed heading for the rear wing is the same.
No, the rear wing, anybody, a layperson can see that it's completely different in design and configuration to an F1. So talk to me about this.
Formula One regulations, a rear wing is very limited in span. It's kind of only about this wide. It's aerodynamically much more efficient to make the wing as wide as possible, make it the full width of the car, which is exactly what this does, because that gives you an end placing of the wing out to here instead of back into here. So that has two effects. One, it makes the wing much more efficient in itself. Just like an aircraft, the bigger the span, the more efficient the wing becomes. Hence, gliders, sailplanes have very large spans compared to their size. But also by having it out here, it helps to draw the rear wheel wake outboard and away from the diffuser. So it's all about increasing the efficiency of that diffuser. I suppose compared to a Formula One car, the contribution of downforce from the front and rear wing is less. The contribution from the floor is proportionally much larger, because we're so free of regulations relative to Formula One on the floor. We can do what we want.
And packaging a 4.5 litre V10 engine. Yeah. I mean, you said it weighs 180 kilos, did you
150.
say? 150.
It's still a big
unit.
It's a bigger unit to package.
It was a 6.5 litre V12 in the Valkyrie, wasn't it?
Correct, yeah. So it's by going to a V10 of small capacities, it's a significantly smaller and lighter engine than the Valkyrie engine, but it's still, as you say, it's still a largest V10. But that's just the usual packaging problem. If exactly it's the same as Formula One, in that you go from what effectively dictates the wheelbase of the car is getting the driver's feet far enough rearwards to allow a good length of nose impact structure. Then the length of the driver and himself, and in this case a passenger that's slightly staggered rearwards of the driver. The fuel tank and battery underneath the fuel tank, same as Formula One. Then the combustion engine, the e-motor and the gearbox. And that's what you've got to squeeze in. And the gearbox is exactly the same layout as a Formula One car, so it's a longitudinal gearbox with a bevel drive to a final drive unit. So all the same.
Co-developed between Red Bull Advanced Technologies and X-Track, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the specification of the gearbox comes from us. The detailed design of the gears, etc., is done by X-Track, which is exactly the same as we do on the Formula One car. So all the philosophies that have gone into the car, right down to things like that, are the same as we've done in Formula One. So I think it is very much a Formula One technology that we use day to day, applied to this.
Would you say, because apart from the constraints that you've imposed yourself, which we know, the 2 seats, a few other things that we talked about, is this the least compromised machine you've ever done?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's Formula One, as we said, is restricted by regulations. The regulations we've got for this are effectively self-imposed. Tyre loads, of course, getting 2 people in, and safety being the prime ones.
And another important part of this is, well, for me, it's £5 million, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an academic sum as far as I'm concerned, but I get to drive a car that you've done, but also you guys are going to supply it's like a part of the family. Is that an important driver of this as well?
It is. It's one of the reasons for limiting it to 50 people, or 50 cars, I should say, is that first of all, if we went more than that, then we wouldn't be able to manufacture it and assemble it in the same way as we do a Formula One car.
And it's going to be done here, isn't it?
It'll be done here. It'll be assembled here, and it'll be assembled in the exact same way as we. The whole process from start to finish, from research to design to development to assembly, as I mentioned, it's all Formula One, and it's keen that we should have that and take that approach. The great thing about this project is it's in many ways similar to Formula One, but actually compared to Formula One in a much more stretched out timescale. So a Formula One car, typically from when you start researching a car, let's say, particularly if it's a new set of regulations which can be considered in that way, then generally speaking, in first sight of a new set of regulations, somewhere between 12 and 18 months before the car has to go to its first test. With this, as you mentioned earlier, my first sketch for it was very early, sort of over the Christmas period into January 21. So, and we're now out of the concept phase into the detailed design phase. So we've been in the concept phase, if you like, for 3 years. In Formula One, you'd be, let's say, 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And what that's allowed us to do is really quiz it, be self-critical, be very careful on the direction we've taken. Quite often gone off on a route, evaluated it, said no, not happy with that, changed, pursued another route. And that's been quite exciting because it's not something we normally ever have the luxury of doing.
Yeah.
On the interior, that's now what we're working on. So we've got we've had a seating mock-up from really quite early on to work out the ergonomics.
But this stuff is, I mean, I say it like it's an afterthought. It's not. It's absolutely crucial. Being comfortable, being able to see out, being able to place
absolutely, all that. Making sure that you've got a reasonably comfortable space for both the driver and the passengers. That all is part of the basic package. So we've had a seating mock-up for, I honestly can't remember, it must be 18 months now, to make sure it fulfills all that. And of course, inevitably, then you shuffle things around a bit to make sure it changes. So if you like, the hardware, the shape or the available structural space for the occupants is now fixed. Now it's moving into, okay, where do you put switches, the details, the ergonomics, where do you put screens, all that sort of stuff. How do you make it look nice? Again, the interior, obviously, from the sort of customer enjoyment, the interior is an important factor. So we don't want it to just look like a Spartan kind of race car.
Well, I was going to ask you that. You know, there is a certain beauty in being minimal. Yeah. But equally, a lot of people expect, screens. How many screens do you have in there? Yeah. How are you on haptics? I mean, do you like physical buttons? Obviously.
Physical, yeah.
You
absolutely.
Do. Okay.
I think especially on a car of this level of performance, you can't be kind of.
No. You need to know straight away that.
Yeah. You need a physical knob that you change. So and the interior of the car, we will then offer different options. So
massage seats, Adrian. Does it have massage seats?
I'm afraid it's a bit short. Well, yes, it's the car.
Yes, someone did say that. Yeah, 15,000 RPM. There's a degree of massaging going on. Yeah. The question I wrote down was: is there a certain acceptable level of kind of? You talked about the anticipation / trepidation when you approach a car. Yeah. I would say the Aston Martin Valkyrie generates a fair bit of that. Yeah. And I have driven it, and it's pretty edgy. Mm-hmm. Is that an important component here?
I think it should be. I mean, I think perhaps some people haven't properly understood the Valkyrie. I liken it to, you can either, if you're a motorbiker, you can buy a Goldwing and get one experience, or you can buy a modern superbike and get a very different experience. The Valkyrie is clearly aimed more at the superbike end of things. And this is the next level, or several levels to be honest, on from that. If you get in it with that tingle of excitement and adrenaline and nervousness, I think that I find personally when I get in a race car, particularly the faster cars, that's what I feel. And I think that's part of the excitement of it.
What's your favourite bit in this car? Or what are you most proud of?
The package. For me, it's always the package. There's no individual feature or something. It's about the holistic kind of making sure that everything communicates mechanically, aerodynamically, vehicle dynamics, etc. One thing's on the styling side that I was very keen to make sure is that it looks as if whoever designed the front fender is the same person who designed the rear fender, because so often you see cars where there's no obvious communication between the front of the car and the back of the car. In all senses, also the nose versus the tail, etc. Try to make it so that it's very homogeneous.
Adrian, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll fill in the bank this afternoon, okay? What, 10-20% deposit? Will that secure?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Thanks.
Thank you.